If you don't already know what Artfight is, all you really need to know is that it's an annual team-based art gifting event that lasts for 1 month, and when you make art for the event, it's called an attack. Recently, they rewrote their rules to be more specific and clear than before, which has sparked controversy and discussion within the art communities who partake in the event. I think there's been a lot of bad faith fear-mongering regarding these rules, like conflating referencing with tracing, extrapolating these rules to say 3D models must not be allowed as its own art form, or that you can't digitally ink a photograph of a sketch that you drew traditionally. To be fair, I don't think everyone saying these things are being serious. I think many of them are either being deliberately obtuse or joking about technicalities in the way the rules are worded. It's very likely these rules will be adjusted due to the backlash, and even if they aren't, it would not affect how I engage with the event. These rules are impossible to effectively definitively moderate and can be easily ignored consequence-free, so long as someone does not tell on themselves or record their art process and post it online. If the staff of Artfight want to make their lives harder and get their mod mail flooded with unprovable accusations for no good reason, that's their prerogative. I won't stop them. The fact that these rules are ineffective to enforce means the main thing that they can accomplish is an implicit or accidental value judgment on the relevant technique's level of originality and skill. Like, these practices aren't considered wrong because some of the things covered in these rules are allowed in character reference images or under other specific circumstances, but the context surrounding these rules imply that specific techniques make art inherently of lesser effort, originality, and authenticity. The rule regarding generative AI use, for example, is equally easy to secretly evade, but I'm not criticizing that one, because it has a point. This rule discourages the open use of AI and makes a moral stance about it. So, these other rules arbitrarily disallowing victimless artistic techniques during the event still says something about how people view these techniques. Artistic gatekeeping, often veering into a blatant disregard for disabled and learning artists happening in discussion of these rules, really matters. The problem at play is bigger than this one online art game. On that, do not harass Artfight staff or any Artfight participants that are voicing opinions you disagree with. Artfight staff said they would release a feedback form dedicated to this topic soon, which might already exist by the time this video is released. Regardless, I speculate that these rules existing in the first place either comes from tunnel-visioned elitism or trying to encode the nebulous spirit of Artfight into strictly defined rules, to a fault. None of this is meant in bad spirits. I love Artfight. I have been doing it for 9 years, and I plan to continue. So, I would like the game to improve. If any of the staff hears any of this, thank you for listening. Rule number 5. Bases, character creators, and doll makers may be used for character images, but must be credited. They may not be used for attacks. A. This includes websites like PicCrew, HeroForge, video game character creators, and other doll makers. That's all fine and good so far. No complaints. B. This includes artwork traced from posable 3D models, such as Clip Studio Paint, Design Doll, and similar programs, self-made bases, and photographs you have taken. You lost me. Self-made bases or any other form of directly replicating a pre-existing illustration not being allowed as an attack is fine. If you just use the same pre-made line art or sketch and fill in the details of a character on top of it, I don't think that counts as a new unique piece of art. But 3D models that people are free or licensed to use and self-taken photograph references? Really? For total clarity, I will use the term tracing to refer to directly drawing over a pre-existing asset or image, and I do believe Artfight is using the term this way as well. Referencing or copying is when an image or asset is off to the side and observed during the artistic process. Some people use these terms interchangeably, but I do not. I believe these are separate practices. The problem with tracing is when it's at someone else's expense, by stealing someone else's work and claiming it as your own. blank 3D models meant to be used as tools and photographs that you took and therefore own do not fall into the realm of theft. For absolute clarity, all of my arguments are assuming the material being used is not infringing on anyone else, because these rules are not about theft. Yes, copying or tracing someone else's work and claiming it is yours is bad. First off, on Artfight specifically, this is ridiculously inconsistent with the fact that you are allowed to draw on top of pre-existing 3D models and use pre-existing bases in the 3D category. So, any argument about the attack needing to be wholly original and entirely made by you during the event is just out the window. What I am left to assume is this is about the speed or difficulty involved in making attacks, because digitally sculpting from a pre-existing base in 3D is assumed to take more time or skill than tracing over a 3D model for a 2D illustration. Though, that still doesn't explain the being allowed to just texture a pre-existing 3D model part. That's literally drawing over a 3D model. You didn't make the body or draw the perspective, you just get to pose it and illustrate over it. In terms of dimension, you're only required to make the hair and modify the clothes. Sorry to any bald, naked girlies out there, you're not allowed in this category. You know what? I'm gonna do something fun. This is a gaping wound in the logic and argumentation in favor of the other rules I'm going to discuss, and it deserves a bit more than a passing mention, so I will come back to this. These rules are needlessly contradictory, and my goal in pointing that out is not to get the options that are currently allowed taken away, it's to allow the same types of options for 2D illustrators as well. Now, if you peep into the comment or replies section of any online interface criticizing these rules, you will find plenty of anecdotes from people with disabilities and chronic pain who rely on tracing models and references to illustrate. Some need to work briskly to avoid physical pain, and cannot or do not enjoy spending the time reiterating upon a free-handed sketch to get it to a satisfying level of completion. Others use them to achieve poses and perspectives that they physically cannot conceptualize and execute free-handed within an enjoyable time frame due to conditions such as aphantasia or having one seeing eye. This is fine. If someone is making a new pose and composition for each Artfight attack that they create, there should be no issue here. People describe tracing over references and models as a crutch, and yeah, that is true. It very well can be. Oh well. For one, many artists are confident in their ability to conceptualize 3D objects in physical space to a point where tracing over references and models doesn't show at all in their final piece, but even if someone isn't at that level, no one is required to achieve a certain skill level of art. And to follow the metaphor home, a lot of people need crutches and other physical aids. You know, for disabilities? I think figuring out color palettes by eye without a digital color picker is a very valuable skill for both stylistic distinction and confidently depicting things like skin tones respectfully. However, some people are literally colorblind, or they just don't know how to pick their palettes yet, and don't want to mess it up when handling someone else's character. Or maybe they just don't like making their own color palettes because they don't find that part of the creation process fun and they want to do other things. I don't get to tell others what to do based on my own preferences and artistic values. I know people with forms of chronic pain or aphantasia who don't trace over references or models because that's how they have fun making their own art. You don't get to dictate who does what, though. Just because some disabled people can do without aids or choose to work harder in the face of their disability because they enjoy it, doesn't mean everyone has to do that. Some people say defending tracing over 3D models and references is the same as defending the use of generative AI. I'm disabled, so I have to use generative AI. That sort of argument that was floating around for a little bit. The comparison only works if you don't think. Contrary to what I see argued constantly, the deeper moral problem with generative AI is not whether or not what it puts out is too easy, looks good, or counts as art. If someone showed me a painting made out of fresh blood, My first concern isn't really whether or not the painting took a lot of effort, looks nice, or qualifies as art. Hypothetically, if a machine like generative AI could be made ethically, it would actually be completely fine. If all of the training material was voluntarily contributed and properly compensated, it didn't regurgitate and reinforce biases and bigotry, it was not a monumental strain on both the local and global environment, and we didn't need to pay for our basic needs, so it didn't have any jobs to steal. I'm not saying a system like that is possible or will ever exist. I'm getting to the root of what is actually wrong with generative AI, because it's not the mere fact that it makes images too easily. There are also issues with people chasing instant gratification and generally not respecting art in the process, but that's not exclusive or new to the generative AI boom. Lots of people already did and still do treat human art with the same level of disrespect, and that entire discussion is just way beyond the scope of this video. Listen, there's so many issues with generative AI and the people batting for it. I am not defending generative AI. As it currently exists, I am a generative AI hater. But again, I don't hate it just because it makes images too easily. It's just ridiculous to equate tracing assets you own or otherwise have the right to use with using the bigoted world-melting theft machine. One person is limping without mobility aids. Another person is using a wheelchair. And some other person is holding some bloody disembodied legs while claiming those are actually their own legs and they need them because they're disabled. Then, someone else responds to that situation by saying, everyone should just learn how to walk with their own two legs no matter how hard it is for them, because some people with mobility disabilities can walk. And obviously disabilities affect every single person in the same exact way and to the same degree. I think maybe we are missing the point. I don't care if certain tools make art really easy. It does not need to be hard if improving is not the individual's goal. Do you remember what a hobby is? Do you ever have any fun? Different artists and techniques simply have different paces and methods of streamlining. Digital art has fill tools, magic wands, gradients, clipping layers, so on and so forth. But they're not widely frowned upon in this space just because traditional art also exists, where accomplishing the same tasks is much more involved. Having a wider array of tools available ultimately evens the playing field. Many people cannot draw as fast even with these tools, as some people can without them. Everyone just works at a different pace and has fun with different materials. If certain tools are allowed, and you view it as such a wide advantage, then use them. If you don't have fun using them, then don't. Stop worrying about the art fight boogeyman. Fairness should give people without means better means to accomplish the things that they need or want to do. It shouldn't mean everyone has to accomplish the same exact material action or end result, even if it is painful, impossible, or just takes them an unpleasantly long amount of time. Again, the wheelchair and mobility aid comparison. If a utility exists and is not hurting anyone, whether you need it or not, why not use it if that's what you want to do? Most of my art fight attacks over the past few years have been traditional marker illustrations. I'm not demanding we remove layers, fill tools, and gradients because those accomplish the same thing much faster, easier, and cheaper than alcohol markers do, because I'm having fun and I feel fulfilled by the art that I make at the pace that I make it. If someone speeds through a bunch of art pieces at a rate you could never achieve, regardless of the circumstances allowing them to do that, why on earth should that affect your enjoyment if you aren't being a stick in the mud obsessed with numbers and unnecessarily invested in other people's business? Unemployed people, such as many teenagers on summer break, have an automatic time advantage over any participants who are forced to have jobs. People just don't have the same circumstances. The playing field will never truly be even, And being so obsessed with pace locking every person equally will never work and achieves nothing. If someone believes an artist is holding themselves back because they are neurotypical or able-bodied using these tools in a way they personally disapprove of, why even care so much? For one, you don't just know who is and is not disabled, and you don't get to dictate someone else's relationship to the art they create even if you did magically have access to that information. Have you ever tried minding your own business and doing whatever you personally enjoy instead of making up specific ass, neurotypical, able-bodied people who are bad at art in your head to get mad at online? It is true that directly tracing over 3D models or reference photos without an understanding of anatomy, perspective, and volume can lead to visible inaccuracies and stylistic dissonance. I personally do not like tracing over references or models for anything besides studies because it makes my art look stiff. It's not an enjoyable process for me, and I don't like the way it looks with my art style. But, art is expression. It is not meant to accomplish one single thing for every person who does it. If someone has fun and is fulfilled by tracing over their references, whether they're skilled at it or not, that's good for them. I'm glad that they're having a good time making art that they like. If someone is so scared of getting art from someone they don't like the art style of, I'm sorry? It's an open art gifting game, and nobody can control whether someone has an art style or experience level that they personally deem acceptable. This can happen regardless of if someone is tracing or not. Frankly, if this is something anyone is legitimately worried about, they are just a snobby loser who should not be dictating the rules of a game that is meant to be good-spirited and accessible to all skill levels. Oh no, someone gave me free art, but I think their art looks like shit. I hope Artfight bans harmless accessibility tools to prevent this. You can just keep your mouth shut and block everyone who you think makes bad art, you joyless sack of mulch. And you know what? It's so fucking uselessly cynical to assume everyone who wants to speed up their workflow is just doing it to be lazy or to make a number go up. Like, no one could just have fun drawing as many different characters and making as much art for other people as they can during a timed, highly engaged social event? When it comes to Artfight specifically, people bring up scenarios of point farming or art spamming. I don't know, they're imagining someone posing one 3D model and then tracing over it repeatedly to make Artfight NFTs, I guess. I do think that someone doing that would be going against the spirit of the game, but if that was really the issue, then a more concise rule getting straight to that point would be more effective. Something like tracing over or otherwise directly replicating the same exact piece of art with different characters is not allowed, because that falls in line with the logic behind using bases, which are static, pre-existing illustrations rather than dynamic, malleable tools. I understand the spirit of Artfight, but what goes against it is honestly case-by-case and vibes-based. Casting as wide of a net as possible in an attempt to prevent hypothetical point farming is just not the way to go. There is no doubt in my mind that some Artfight participants are uninspired and point hungry, but they're gonna do their thing regardless. If an artist has passion for what they're doing, regardless of their skill level or technique, their artistic vision will be observable. This relates heavily to the photography rule also being debated. Where do I even start with this one? Photographs may be used as backgrounds and mood boards in attacks and character images, but may not be counted for points. Crediting photography is encouraged, but not necessary. So, this rule is clearly not about credit then. Glad we got that cleared up right away. I kind of want to just go over the wording of this because it's so oddly structured. Photography that you do not own or have permission to use may not be posted by itself. Okay, that implies photography that you do own or have permission to use can be posted by itself. That just doesn't scan alongside the other site standards. You can't just take a photo of something that has the vibes of someone's character and post it as an attack, since it would not visually represent someone's character in a way Artfight categorizes. Maybe they mean you can just use photos you took as vibes for your own character's images? but then they say mood boards cannot be posted on their own for character images or attacks. So you can post an image you took yourself or have free license to use as a standalone character image and not an attack, but if you turn images into a mood board, it's not allowed as a character image either. Got it. I am deliberately nitpicking here. I'm pretty sure I know what these rules are actually trying to say. I assume photography, in the colloquial sense, being a photo of persons, scenery, or anything else that is not directly representative of the character, such as a photo of cosplay or a physical piece of artwork, just can't be posted by itself at all, and you also can't use photos that you don't have the legal rights to use for anything. But they truncated those two related ideas into a sentence that implies something else. Photo bashing and collaging are not permitted. Yeah, okay, this one. So, they already said crediting photography is not required. That can't be the issue here. If you photobash something, it might be difficult to trace it back to the source image if you are not transparent about it, but you can use unedited images without credit anyway. The source doesn't matter. This is just the same shit behind the tracing 3D models and reference photos rule, isn't it? Assuming the photos you use to photobash or collage with are free to use or taken by yourself, literally what is the problem? I don't know how to make it clearer to you that different art paces and techniques simply exist. There are shortcuts, and people will use them if they want to. Tweened animation? That's not legitimate. They only drew or modeled some assets once, then made a computer move it around. That's not original movement. They didn't code the software doing the math. You can't make a plush using fabric that someone else already created. You just cut out a shape from someone else's hard work and stitched it together. I'm not crying slippery slope. I am declaring that the attempts to distinguish legitimate art shortcuts from illegitimate ones when no one's work is being stolen or otherwise infringed upon is arbitrary and needlessly exclusionary while providing no actual benefits for the spirit of the game or proving the authenticity of an artist's work. The deciding factor should not be tools, technique, or time. It should be the visible intent and artistic vision. I understand the potential for laziness and exploitation in theory, but that will either be observable or so well obfuscated that it doesn't matter and won't get caught by these rules anyway. If you're so afraid of unfair point discrepancies for some reason, they should just adjust their rating categories to account for tracing over references and photobashing. A photobashed background could fall under their props, scene elements, and design layout category instead of the scene, for example, and rendering characters heavily involving photobashing or collaging can be added to the flat color or minimal shading categories. Having completely unnecessary, difficult to prove, easy to evade rules for narcs to send reports over will be more of a hassle for the moderators and foster a more toxic culture in online art communities. It would be better to include more legitimate options, even if some people will use them in bad faith sometimes. People already try to inflate their points with the current options. I've seen multiple art pieces where someone clearly just used a pre-made cloud brush to leave a few splotches on gradient blue, maybe adding a flat rectangle of ground at the bottom, and marked it as a scene, even though it was visibly lower effort than what went into drawing the character, and the character was not integrated into the environment at all. Do I think that counts as a scene within ArtFight's point categorization? Not really. Do I think the artist did it to bump up their point count? Yeah, probably. Do I care? Not really. If someone wants to half-ass or lie their way into getting more points, they're doing a disservice to themselves by not having fun creating art for its own sake. And you know what? If it really is just that much fun for them to blot down a couple pre-made clouds in 5 seconds, who am I to stop them? I don't think cloud-shaped brushes should be banned. Plenty of people use cloud brushes with visible intent and regard for composition. Yet again, it's about artistic intent and vision, not the tools used or time spent. ArtFight already describes the standards for heavily relying on pre-made brushes for environments or having a scene that isn't to the same level of completion as the characters drawn in it. Tracing, references, photo bashing, and collaging can just be slotted into specifications like this. Those who are honest will use the categories and techniques as intended. Those who are dishonest are already lying and will continue to do so in whatever ways they can find. Most will engage with the system in good faith, and some simply won't. It doesn't matter how narrow you make the options. Artfight states that they don't heavily moderate use of the polished label, presumably for this very reason. Have fun with the game, make art how you want to, and avoid people that do it in a way that you don't like. These rules imply a hierarchy of artistic worthiness, lend themselves to people seeking out reasons to accuse and bully others, and make many artists feel alienated for no good reason. If left the way it is, it will deter inexperienced and disabled artists, foster hostility and elitism, and generally decrease the quality of social interaction on the platform. If the rules were made more precise and less exclusionary, the worst thing that could happen is some annoying people having a little more plausible deniability when they artificially inflate their score in a made-up game for fun where the appeal is making art for other people. The score and teams are just friendly competition and fun aesthetics to give the event structure. Fairness for the sake of points doesn't matter. I don't care. Here it is, a theoretically legal art fight attack that I made in about 30 minutes. Falling under the categories of pre-made base with a self-produced texture, I was able to find an exact category match from a previous year, but it was a friendly fire marked as polished, so I'm not sure exactly how much this would be worth in points. Give or take, this would be worth about 35 to 40 points. This is equal to, or more than I have earned on attacks that take me 2 to 4 hours. Point farmers are clearly not up to date on the art fight meta. They're never gonna hit world record high quota at this rate.